hope you're all having a fantastic day. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about PRT. So if you guys don't know and you're not like super into like the beauty community and what goes on, recently on Twitter, Norvina, who's really Miss Claudia, but she's the daughter of Anastasia, who is like Anastasia Beverly Hills. I can't remember off the top of my head what kind of role Norvina plays, but I know she is involved when it comes to designing the products, picking out the colors, the formulas, also when it comes to like the branding and picking people on the PR lists. Anyways, she was recently on Twitter within the last like week or so and was tweeting and asking people like, hey, like please share your content. We're looking for more people to add to the PR lists. So it was really cool and it was a really unique opportunity for smaller artists to be able to share their work and have her see it. I know sometimes that is kind of frustrating and difficult for smaller artists to really compete with the Instagram algorithm. So I thought it was really cool and it was really inspiring to see her add so many new artists and there were so many people excited about it. So I've always found PR to be really interesting and I hope you guys do too. So basically in this video, I just kind of want to talk about like what is PR, how it like evolved from what it was like even just like a decade ago, its relationship and like how it's used with influencers, and then also some like drama involving PR just because I find that really interesting too. So we're gonna be talking about all of that, and please also comment down below. I would love for this to be more of a discussion than like a monologue because I feel like everyone's like interpretation of like what people should and shouldn't do with PR and just like all of that is so interesting. I've always found like the marketing aspect and like the social aspect really of marketing so fascinating. So I hope you guys are excited for this video and let's get into the tea. First off, let's talk about traditional PR, what that looked like, because it wasn't just like invented in the past like decade or so. It existed way before that. I just feel like it wasn't really in the public eye as much, so people didn't really know about it. So we're going to talk about that. I also kind of want to define what PR is because some of you might not know. And I'm also going to be referring to all this stuff in like the beauty context. I'm sure the way PR looks and people receiving PR might be different in like the fashion industry versus like the video game industry. Like I'm sure it's so different. So my experience is with the beauty industry, so I'm going to be talking about PR and what that looks like in the beauty industry context. So PR, it stands for public relations, and basically what that is to me, my definition of that is a brand is launching a new product, they want to build hype around that product and get people excited about it, so they send it out to influential people, hoping that they will share it with their community and get their audience excited about it as well. And they also typically send PR before the product actually launches so that people can get excited about it, and by the time that the product actually launches, the audiences are like ready to go when it hits the shelves to buy it. So in my mind, like that's how I see PR. So interestingly enough, traditionally PR was mainly sent to like magazine editors and also PR outlets. There'd be PR firms and basically the brand would work directly with the firm, and then the firm would choose like who receives the product based on who like kind of aligns with the brand. And this still is true today. Like I know there's some times where I will be not in contact with the brand themselves, but they'll have like a PR person as like the mediator, or let's just say a brand wants to send out a product, maybe they don't want them to be on the list like all the time, but the PR person can pick and choose like, oh, this will be a great person for this specific campaign. But since social media has really grown a lot in the past decade or so, like less than that, but really in the past decade, you've seen that shift from like the traditional people who would receive PR to being like influencers. So beauty influencers, people who review PR like all the time for a living. These are the people that have like millions and millions of followers either on Instagram or YouTube. I'd say mainly Instagram you see these beauty influencers. Sometimes they'll have YouTube accounts as well. You also have fashion influencers, sometimes celebrities. I feel like the biggest like audience for receiving these PR packages is more like beauty and fashion like influencers. It makes sense from a marketing standpoint why that shift has happened, but I just find it really interesting how quickly that's happened in the past 10 years. And I think that's why PR has been such a big deal recently, is because like people are more aware of that because it's more public when it gets sent to influencers rather than before it was more like behind the scenes. So what's really interesting to look at is PR and its relationship with influencers and even how that's changed in the past 5 years. So 5 years ago, actually, I think it was like last week, I posted my very first photo to my beauty account. I mainly started posting to that account because I loved makeup and I wanted to kind of share my journey with makeup and share the looks I created because if you create this beautiful look, at the end of the day you have to wash it off and there's no way of like saving it. So for me, it was a way of saving my work. And I just honestly didn't even think about PR back then. That was not even a thought in my mind because it was so different. But it was really challenging to gain momentum. It just seemed to be really exponential when it came to your audience. So if you had like 500 followers, it was so much harder to get 500 extra followers than if you were at like 5,000 followers and even at 50,000 followers. So it was really hard to get noticed, and you would really rely a lot on hashtags and also timing your posts to make sure that the majority of your audience could see it at a certain time, because the Instagram algorithm back then was chronological. So I took that into account a lot when posting content and just making sure I was posting at a time where I thought the majority of my audience was on. Now, back then, I feel like when it came to PR lists, and again, I'm not speaking from a brand perspective because I've never worked for a cosmetics brand, but it just seemed like the larger audience influencers, like those with 100,000 followers or like 1 million followers, those were the ones on PR lists. And this really created drive for people to have a larger audience, because if you had a larger audience, you had larger opportunities, whether this came to like collaborating with brands, collaborating with other influencers, networking, receiving PR, all those things, going on brand trips. I feel like that list was really more for the elite and people who had like a large amount of followers. Gauging someone's influence based off of their followers back then was pretty accurate. It was pretty uncommon for people to buy followers. Like understanding someone's like influential abilities if they had like an audience of 5,000 like versus 500 like was pretty accurate, I would say. But since the algorithm changed, there's been a lot of changes since that happened. So I could post something like right now and some people might see it right now. Some people might not see it until like 5 hours from now. Some people might not see it until 5 days from now. So it's been changing a lot, and so it's no longer where you post at a certain time and you know that your audience will see it like at that exact moment. Something else that's happened too that's been really interesting is how it's more common for people to buy followers. So it's no longer like trustworthy if someone has like 5,000 followers, like, well, in part because of the algorithm, but also because people buy followers. Like just because you have 5,000 followers doesn't mean that your photos can be seen by all 5,000 accounts. So what companies are looking at now, as opposed to like following, is they're looking more at engagement. So how many people are liking your photo? How many people are commenting on your photo? Those types of things. So honestly, the biggest positive that has come out of this algorithm change on Instagram is just seeing a bunch of smaller artists or like micro influencers being put on these PR lists and receiving PR even though they previously wouldn't. Okay, so now that we've kind of defined what PR is, talked about why influencers get it, like the history behind it, let's talk about the tea, because I feel like that's the most interesting part, and that's like where like a lot of the drama stems from, and even like the negative connotations come from about PR. So first of all, I feel like PR creates these like sort of cliques, and it makes it really hard for smaller influencers to even get started or even like break through, because those groups are so cliquey. And I feel like it is not necessarily like the people themselves are cliquey in nature. I just feel like it creates a group of people that can grow exponentially, and it's harder for other people to grow because of these lists. So an example of this would be, for example, okay, the new Riviera palette just came out and I bought it and I love it, and I've never been on Anastasia's PR list. I would love that. I love their products, but I'm more than happy to go out and buy it myself. But for those people who are on the list and get the product before it is launched, they have the opportunity to talk about the product, create videos on the product, create content using the product without really much competition. So those people are the ones that get shared on Anastasia's account. Those are the people that get the views on their YouTube videos, and their videos just like skyrocket. I don't know if you guys have created videos before on YouTube, but some videos, if they gain traction and they start to like get views, it just kind of continues. For example, my James Charles palette video I created, that was like the really colorful look. I'm not on their PR list, so I created that video the day the palette came out. I went and bought it because I knew that my opportunity for creating a video that people would actually see was shrinking by the minute because people were creating videos. Even if it's the day the new palette comes out, their content isn't fresh anymore because all these other creators have had the opportunity to basically capture the audience and capture the views. So let's just say you upload a video, but there's already like 20 other videos out there with like 70,000 views, you're gonna have a really hard time having your video even show up in the listings when someone searches like ABH Riviera palette. That's just kind of the way it works. And I don't mean to say like clicky like in a bad way, like the people themselves are clicky. I just feel like these PR lists really create cliques of people who, if they're on all these different PR lists for all these different brands, like they are just gonna keep growing and growing and growing and staying at the top. And it's harder for new people to come into the market because their videos aren't gonna get seen because these other people are capturing the views, and that's what shows up in search results. So that's kind of one of the negatives when it comes to PR lists. I also feel like there's a lot of negativity and misunderstanding when it comes to PR lists, and I saw this a lot actually on Twitter when Norvina was encouraging people to share their work. There was a lot of people who weren't necessarily like in the beauty community and they weren't artists that were kind of like either offended by people doing this or they were upset about it. I saw a lot of tweets from my friends where people would be like, oh, you're just doing this because you want free makeup, like why don't you just buy it like the rest of us? And I think there have been artists too who have like kind of helped create this negative connotation. For example, there was a lot of drama videos made. I don't even know if this is like a year ago, it might have been 2 years ago now, but Manny MUA, who is a makeup artist, he created a video where he was like on Snapchat or something, and he was talking about how he wasn't on a Kylie Cosmetics PR list. Now he's a really, really big influencer. I don't know off the top of my head how many followers he has. He has a couple million though, on YouTube and also on Instagram, and so he can afford Kylie Cosmetics, but he's not on the PR list. So he was kind of complaining about this whole clicky thing about if you're not on the list, then you have a harder time like getting your video seen. So he was kind of complaining about saying that and saying like, oh, if I could just get on the PR list. But yeah, I feel like there's a negative vibe where people like want to be on PR. There's like a understanding and there's a respect for that, but then there's also like a negative side too. Like, oh, like why do you want to be on the PR? Do you just want to get free makeup? So there's kind of like a weird negativity around that, and like I don't see that problem. I think it's great when people want to share their work, and I get really excited for my friends too when they get on a PR list because I know that they're growing, and like I don't see it as a competition because I think everyone's so different and people can follow like multiple accounts. They can be subscribed to multiple channels. We're not like competing for one person's attention. So I don't really see it as much of a competition when people get on a PR list that I'm not on. Like it's not that big of a deal, but I know that there is a lot of negativity and negative, I guess, opinions around people wanting to be on PR lists from people who aren't on them. Like people who aren't like trying to be a makeup influencer. There's a lot of negativity from that. So I've kind of just seen that overall and just the idea like the motives, I guess, behind wanting to be on a PR list. Speaking of motives, one thing that's kind of negative too, and is kind of like hard to really understand, is the brand's motives in setting the PR. So like obviously they want people to like talk about the product, but sometimes like when they launch a product, it might not be good. It's going to happen where you're going to get negative reviews, but what's interesting is like seeing the brand's motives. Like, are they just trying to get people to talk about their brand? But like I've seen this too where like people are afraid to talk negatively about the brand's product because they want to stay on the list, they want to get the free makeup, but then they don't want to talk truthfully about the product, or for the ones that do talk truthfully about it and say a negative review, they get taken off the PR list. So it's like, that's kind of sketchy too. So it's like, our brands just like expecting people to like talk positively about it? So then it's like, well then it's like, what are the motivations of the influencer? Do you really trust them to be honest and talking about a product to see if they really like it? Because maybe they're just talking about it so they stay on the PR list and don't have to pay for makeup. So you know, like it just seems like the motivations behind like from the brands and also from the influencers is kind of gray, and it's kind of hard to understand at times. I think it kind of falsely motivates people and makes them like maybe not be truthful in their reviews because they just want to stay on PR and want to keep receiving those free products. Yeah, I just think it kind of messes with motivations, and it's kind of hard to see like who's being truthful and then who's not. And lastly, I do feel like PR can sometimes distort the influencer's reality, and I mean this in a couple different ways. So first of all, when it comes to costs, I feel like sometimes if you're getting the products for free, you might not remember or really like value how much that can cost to people, both like buying it in a store or even like shipping internationally. Just because like I have all these palettes doesn't mean my audience can afford to buy all these palettes. And I feel like I do try to take this into consideration. I've thought a lot about this in recent videos. That's why I use the James Charles palette in like 3 different videos that I created, because I was like, you know what? It's totally normal for the average person to have like one eyeshadow palette and use just that for like 6 months. If you're receiving all this free makeup all the time, it might distort your reality and you might forget that, and it can be harmful to be creating new videos on new products like all the time and not reusing products anymore, because not everyone can afford to like buy a new product every single week or buy a new eyeshadow palette or have 20 eyeshadow palettes. So I feel like being aware of the costs and even just the value of makeup itself, like I'll be honest, I still buy most of my makeup, and a lot of my makeup I do purchase, but I feel like I used to get really excited about new makeup in a way that I don't as much anymore. I still do, but it's not to the same extent, and I feel like I do get kind of bored with makeup quicker than I used to, just because I have received it for free. I think sometimes PR can unfortunately distort an influencer's reality and understanding like, oh, look, just because this palette is brand new and I got it for free doesn't mean that like my audience is going to like that, because maybe they can't afford it. Or maybe I should do like 4 tutorials using the same eyeshadow palette, even though I just got a ton of other eyeshadow palettes. I want to use this one and create a couple different tutorials, knowing that if someone buys this palette, they're not going to just use it one time and be done with it. They're going to use it multiple times. So I think as long as people and influencers who receive a ton of PR can recognize that and recognize where their audience is at, it can help. But I think unfortunately it can sometimes distort their reality. So that's pretty much it on this video about PR and just talking about it, and just, I don't know, I just find it really interesting. I'm just really thinking about it and thinking about different perspectives and understanding like the audience's relationship with PR and how it maybe impacts whether or not they trust an influencer, if they know that they're on the PR list, how can really help and hurt influencers, how can help some of them grow exponentially, and how it can make it really hard for smaller influencers to feel like they're even getting noticed. I honestly feel like I just timed it right. When I started 5 years ago on Instagram, I feel like it was a lot easier. Looking back on my first Instagram post and looking at like the quality of my content is so much like lesser than some of these other smaller influencers. Like I was looking through Norvina's tweets and looking at the people like sharing their content, and it blew me away to see so many creative artists. Like I just feel like there's so many creative people out there nowadays, which I feel like wasn't really happening 5 years ago, which is really, really cool. But then it's also harder for them too to feel like they're getting noticed. So anyways, I just find this interesting. I hope you guys did too. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!